It was a regular Saturday. The kind where everybody in the city seemed to have the same idea at the same time. Get to the store, grab what you need, get back home. The lines were long, the carts were full, and nobody was in a particularly patient mood. A woman made her way through the aisles quietly. Nothing about her stood out. Plain jeans, an old jacket that had been washed too many times, a small basket with just a few things in it. Some rice, a can of beans, cooking oil, a loaf of bread. The kind of shopping list that tells you a person is getting by, not living large. She got in line at register 4 and waited her turn like everybody else. When she finally reached the front and the young man behind the counter finished ringing her up, she reached into her jacket for her wallet. It wasn't there. She tried the other pocket, then her purse, then back to the jacket again. "I am so sorry," she said. "I think I left my wallet at home." The man standing directly behind her did not take the news well. "You have got to be kidding me right now," he said, loud enough for half the store to hear. "I have been standing in this line and you don't even have money on you. That is unbelievable." The store manager appeared within seconds like he had been waiting for exactly this kind of situation. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step to the side if you can't complete your purchase." People were staring. Some were shaking their heads. The woman stood there with her groceries on the belt and nowhere to go, and the embarrassment on her face was the kind you feel in your chest, not just your cheeks. And then the cashier did something that nobody saw coming. He reached into the front pocket of his apron, pulled out some folded bills and a handful of coins, and he counted it out right there on the counter. Every last cent. And he paid for her groceries himself. The woman looked at him, really looked at him, and then she did something that made every single person in that store stop what they were doing. "My name is Diana Mercer. I am the founder and chairman of Mercer Capital Group, and I own this building. Now, before I get into what happened after that, if you are new here and you love a story about real character being rewarded and arrogance being humbled, go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell. Because what comes next in this story is something else entirely. Let me tell you about Diana first. 52 years old. Born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama. The youngest daughter of a construction worker named Harold and a seamstress named Gloria. They were not wealthy people. They were not even comfortable people by most measures. But they were rich in the way that actually lasts. Harold Mercer fixed things with his hands and raised his children with his words. He had a saying he repeated so often that Diana could hear it in his voice even now, 30 years after she had left Alabama. "The clothes do not make you. The car does not make you. If you have to announce what you are, you probably aren't it." Gloria sewed other people's clothing for 30 years and made it look dignified. She had a gift for reading people that bordered on supernatural. "Pay attention to how folks treat the ones who can't do anything for them," she told Diana once. That right there is the only test that matters. Diana carried both of those lessons with her from Birmingham to Atlanta to Charlotte to Houston, where Mercer Capital Group was now headquartered. $3.7 billion in assets. Real estate, infrastructure, technology. She had built it from nothing. From a small property management company she started at 26 with a loan she probably should not have qualified for. She drove herself to work most mornings. She carried her own bags. She did not wear her wealth like a uniform, because her father had taught her that a person who needs to be seen as important probably has not done anything truly important yet. But for all that she had built, Diana had one place in her life that stayed stubbornly empty. She had never found the right partner, not for lack of trying. She had been in 3 serious relationships in the past 15 years, and each one had left a different kind of mark. The first was a man named Carter. Polished, smart, the kind of man who always said the right thing in the right room. When her company went through a brutal stretch and she lost nearly $200 million in a single quarter, Carter became distant within weeks. He sat her down one evening and told her he had not planned on navigating this level of uncertainty. He wished her well and he left. When things turned around, he came back. She did not let him in. The second was a man named Philip. 2 years together. She had trusted him completely, which made it worse when her financial advisor flagged an irregularity in a joint account she had allowed him access to. Philip had been quietly moving money out for the better part of 8 months. $380,000. When she confronted him, he told her she would never even have noticed if someone hadn't pointed it out. As if the amount made it forgivable. The third was a man named Gregory. He was the one she had genuinely believed in. Understated, thoughtful. Spent his weekends volunteering at a transitional housing program. She had started to imagine a future with him. Then her lawyer called to tell her that Gregory's attorney had reached out regarding a financial agreement. Gregory had been having a contract drafted that would entitle him to $40 million if they separated within 5 years. They were not even engaged. He had already planned the ending before they had decided on a beginning. After Gregory, Diana stopped putting herself in that position. She poured herself into her work and into her foundation, which funded job training programs and after-school centers across Texas. She told herself it was enough. Most days she almost believed it. Her driver Raymond had worked with her for nearly a decade. He was a man of very few words and very accurate observations. "You need to let somebody in, boss," he said one evening as they sat in traffic on the 610. "I let people in, Raymond. That's the problem." He didn't respond to that. Just drove. A few weeks later, Diana's mother called from Birmingham. Gloria was 77 now. Her voice had gotten softer, but her instincts had not dulled a single degree. "I had a dream about you," she said. "Good or bad, Mama?" "Neither. It was just true. You were walking through a market and there was food everywhere. More than you could ever need. But you were hungry. And I kept watching you walk right past the places that had what you were looking for because you were looking in the wrong direction." Diana was quiet. "You've been searching in places that feel safe to you," her mother continued. "Boardrooms and benefit dinners and circles where everybody already knows who you are. But what you're looking for isn't in any of those places. Then where is it? In plain sight, baby. Where it has always been. You just have to be willing to look." "And how will I know?" Gloria paused. "You'll know because he'll give you something he genuinely cannot spare. And he won't ask for anything back." Diana sat with that phone call for several days. And then she came up with a plan. It was not a complicated plan. That was the point of it. She would go somewhere completely unremarkable, dressed as an unremarkable person, with no identification and no money. And she would see exactly what the world looked like from that angle. She told Raymond what she intended to do, and he stared at her in the rearview mirror for a long moment. "And I just wait in the parking lot." "Yes. You watch. You don't come in under any circumstances. What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing is going to go wrong, Raymond. It's a grocery store." He drove her there, dropped her a block and a half away, parked in the far corner of the lot where he could see the entrance. Diana walked in wearing old jeans, a faded jacket, worn sneakers. She looked like somebody's neighbor, someone you'd pass without a second thought. That was exactly what she needed. She moved through the aisles without rushing, picked up a few things: rice, beans, oil, bread, couple of tomatoes. She chose register 4, got in line and waited. The man who stepped in line behind her was tall with a pressed collared shirt and the energy of someone who considered every minute of his life a valuable resource that other people kept wasting. His name, as she would later learn, was Todd. Before she had even moved forward 2 spots, he sighed loud enough to be a statement. When she made it to the front and the cashier finished scanning her items and she reached for a wallet that was not there, Todd became the kind of loud that people become when they have decided that embarrassing someone else costs them nothing. The cashier's name was Marcus Webb, 27 years old. The kind of young man whose face you trusted immediately without knowing why. He had a calmness to him that seemed like something he had earned rather than something he had been born with. His eyes were steady. His voice was even. Even when Todd was performing for an audience behind Diana, Marcus just watched her. Not him. He made $12 an hour at this register. After his shift he went home, helped his 16-year-old sister Jade with her homework, made sure she had eaten, and then opened his laptop for his night class in social work at the community college across town. Jade was the reason for most of it. Their father had left so long ago that Marcus barely had a picture of him in his head anymore. Their mother, Patricia, had worked 2 nursing assistant jobs for as long as Marcus could remember. Last winter she had a stroke. She survived, but she could no longer work and she could no longer live alone. Marcus had moved her into the apartment with him and Jade. He was now covering everything. He did not talk about this at work. He did not talk about it much anywhere. He just handled it the way he had always handled hard things, by waking up the next day and doing what needed to be done. When Diana looked up at him and said she had left her wallet at home, Marcus did not look annoyed. He did not sigh. He looked at her the way a decent person looks at someone who is embarrassed and does not need it made worse. And when Todd started up behind her and Gerald the manager materialized with his apologies and his policy, Marcus had already made his decision. He reached into his apron pocket and pulled out what he had. $23.47. He counted it out without drama, slid it into the register, and started putting her groceries into a bag. Gerald started to say something about store policy. "This isn't the store's money," Marcus said simply. "It's mine." That was all he said about it. Todd muttered something about foolishness. Marcus didn't respond. He finished bagging, handed Diana her things, and told her to have a good evening. She took the bags. She started toward the door. And then she stopped. She turned around, walked back to register 4, set the bags down. Everyone in that store watched her reach into the inner lining of her jacket, the pocket on the inside that you'd never know was there unless you knew, and pull out a phone that did not belong to the world of old jackets and worn sneakers. She made one call. "Raymond, pull around to the front entrance. Bring the folio." 90 seconds later, a black Mercedes came to a stop outside the automatic doors. Raymond stepped out in a dark suit, came inside, and handed Diana a slim leather folder. The store had gone completely silent. Diana opened the folder, removed a card, placed it on the counter in front of Marcus. "My name is Diana Mercer," she said. "I am the founder and chairman of Mercer Capital Group." She let that settle. "I own this building. I own the shopping center 2 blocks east of here. I have 14 properties in this zip code. And I came in here today without a wallet on purpose." She looked at Todd. "I wanted to see what kind of people I was surrounded by. I wanted to see who would step up and who would step back." Todd had nothing to say for the first time since he had gotten in line. She looked at the other customers. "Most of you watched. Some of them looked at the floor." She looked at Marcus. "And you did the one thing nobody else even considered doing." Marcus was very still. His eyes were bright. "You work 2 jobs. You are raising your sister. You are taking care of your mother. You are going to school at night. And when a stranger couldn't pay for a bag of rice and a loaf of bread, you gave her everything you had in your pocket without being asked and without expecting anything back." Her voice was steady but only barely. "My mother told me I'd find what I was looking for when someone gave me something they truly could not spare, and did it freely." She looked at him for a long moment. "That $23 means more to me than this building does, because of what it says about who gave it." Marcus put his hand over his mouth. His eyes filled. The elderly woman near the back of the line started clapping first. Then a man with a cart full of groceries. Then the bag boy at the end of the counter. Then the whole store, all of them standing, all of them clapping, in a neighborhood grocery store in the middle of a regular Saturday afternoon. Todd stood in the center of it and looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Someone in the store filmed the whole thing. They always do. The video was everywhere within 24 hours. 19 million views in the first 3 days. Every news program wanted it. Every morning show had an opinion about it. Diana did not care about any of that. She cared about what she did next. She asked Marcus if she could buy him a cup of coffee sometime. He said he had his mother's medication to pick up that evening and his sister's school project to help with the next morning, but he had Sunday afternoon free. "There's a place called Pearls on Alameda," he said. "Nothing fancy, but it's good. I'll be there," she said. She drove herself in a Honda Accord she kept in the garage for situations exactly like this one. Marcus was already in a booth by the window when she walked in. He had on a neat gray shirt and he stood up when he saw her, which she noticed. They stayed at that table for 4 hours. He told her about his mother's stroke and what the night of the call had been like, driving to the hospital not knowing what he would find when he got there. He told her about his father leaving when Marcus was 9 and the particular kind of quiet that settles into a house after something like that. He told her about Jade, how she wanted to study biology, how she was already talking about environmental research, how at 16 she had more direction than most adults Marcus knew. Diana told him about Birmingham and her parents and the loan that had started everything and the years of building something in rooms where people kept underestimating her. She told him about Carter and Philip and Gregory without naming them, just describing what each experience had taken from her and what she had decided after. He listened the way people listen when they are actually listening and not just waiting for their turn to talk. At the end, she told him the truth about the wallet. "I know," he said. He said it quietly and without any edge to it. "You know, I figured it out when you pulled that phone out." He smiled a little. "That pocket was working just fine. And you're not bothered by it." He thought for a second. "No. I think when you've been let down enough times you start having to find creative ways to figure out who people really are. I get it." He paused. "Besides, I was just being myself. There wasn't anything to figure out on my end." Diana looked at him across that table in that small diner and thought that her mother had been right, the way her mother was almost always right, that what she had been looking for had been in plain sight. She had just been looking in the wrong direction for a very long time. Meanwhile, Todd's Saturday had turned into something considerably worse than a long line at a grocery store. The video identified him within hours. His employer, a financial consulting group downtown, started receiving calls and emails by Sunday morning. By Monday, he was called into a meeting that lasted 11 minutes and ended with him being walked out of the building with a box of desk items and a terminated contract. He posted an apology video, cried on camera, talked about his bad day and his good heart and the little league team he helped coach on weekends. Most people did not find it convincing. The store footage had not captured a man having a rough afternoon. It had captured a man revealing exactly how he thought about other people. His car went back to the dealership 2 months later. His social circle got smaller. Job applications went unanswered because in the current age, the first thing most employers do is search your name, and what came up when they searched Todd's was not something any of them wanted associated with their company. Some moments define you longer than you expect them to. 6 months went by. Diana and Marcus took their time with each other. No announcements, no pressure, no grand gestures. They had dinner on Sunday evenings. They took walks. They cooked together in her kitchen and argued warmly about whose grandmother had the better recipe for everything. She went to his mother's birthday. He met Raymond and made the man laugh twice in one evening, which Diana later told him was some kind of record. He never asked her for anything. She never tried to use what she had to move things faster than they were ready to move. But she did a few things quietly. She covered his last year of school, gave it to him as a loan with terms only the two of them knew about. She set up a scholarship in his mother's name for students at the community college he attended, priority given to students who were also caregivers, and she connected him with the executive director of a nonprofit coalition Mercer Capital had helped fund for years. Not to give him a job, to give him knowledge, access, the kind of education that classrooms don't cover. He graduated on a Thursday evening in May. Diana sat in the second row and watched him cross the stage. Jade was beside her, practically vibrating with pride. Raymond sat on Diana's other side with his arms folded and an expression that anyone who knew him would recognize as deeply moved. Afterward, Diana suggested Pearl's on Alameda. Same booth, same coffee, same place where it had all become real. "Why always here?" he asked. "Because this is where I stopped pretending I wasn't falling in love with you." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then Diana reached into her coat pocket and set a small box on the table between them. "It's not a diamond," she said. "I want you to know that going in." He opened it. A gold band, simple and clean. And on the inside of it, engraved in small clean letters, 2347. He looked up at her. "That number is the most significant transaction I have ever been part of," she said. "Not because of what it bought, because of what it said about the person who gave it." His eyes were full. "Marry me," she said. "Not the company, not the buildings, not any of that. Just me, Diana, Harold and Gloria's daughter from Birmingham who needed to know if anybody real was still out there." Marcus laughed, and then he was crying, and then he said yes before she had even finished the sentence, and she put the ring on his finger right there in that booth while the owner of Pearls pretended not to watch from behind the counter and absolutely watched. 3 months after that, Marcus was back at Register 4 on a Wednesday afternoon. He had kept the job through all of it. Diana had suggested more than once that he didn't have to. "I know I don't have to," he said each time. "That register is where my life changed. I'm not walking away from it until I'm ready." He was scanning groceries for a woman with a cart full of frozen meals and paper towels when he heard the automatic doors and looked up. Todd walked in. He looked different. Not in one specific way, but in the way that people look different when life has worked on them for a while. The pressed collar was gone. So was whatever it was that had made him take up so much space in a line. He moved through the store without calling attention to himself, chose a few basic things, and got in line. When he reached Register 4, he recognized Marcus immediately. He went very still. Marcus scanned his items without saying anything. Gave him the total. Todd counted his cash carefully. He came up short. He started to put one of the items back. Marcus looked at what he was holding. A bag of rice. He reached into his apron pocket. Todd shook his head. "No, you don't have to do that. Not after." Marcus put the money on the counter anyway. Todd's jaw was tight. His eyes were red around the edges. "I don't understand why you would do that for me." Marcus looked at him for a moment. Then he said the same thing he had said 6 months ago to a woman in an old jacket. "You needed something. I had it. That's really all there is to it." Todd stood there at Register 4 and could not hold it together. When he finally left, he took his groceries, and he took something else with him that you cannot put in a bag: the particular weight of being treated with decency by someone you had treated very badly, and what it asks of you to carry that. Diana and Marcus were married on a Saturday morning in October. Not at a hotel ballroom. Not at some venue that required a coordinator and a deposit and a 17-page contract. They got married in the parking lot of the Quick Mart on Cullen Boulevard because the store's owner, when he heard the story, offered the whole space and refused to hear any argument about it. String lights everywhere. 50 chairs. Jade in a yellow dress that she had picked out herself. Patricia, Marcus's mother, in the front row with Raymond beside her because Diana had decided those two people had earned the best seats. The elderly woman who had started clapping 6 months ago was there. Gerald, the store manager, was there. A few regular customers who had witnessed the whole thing and somehow heard about the wedding were there. Marcus stood at the front and watched Diana walk toward him and looked like a man who still was not entirely sure how his life had gotten this good and had decided to stop questioning it and just be grateful. Their vows were short. Diana said she promised to always tell him the truth, to never need him to be anything other than exactly who he already was, and to keep $23.47 somewhere on her person at all times just in case. Marcus said he promised to love the girl from Birmingham, not the billionaire. That he had figured out a long time ago that the best thing money could buy you was the freedom to be honest, and that he intended to be honest with her for the rest of his life. Gloria watched the whole ceremony on a video call from Birmingham. When Diana glanced at the screen, her mother was dabbing her eyes with a dish towel. "Mama, she is the one from the dream, baby. The one you kept walking past. I'm so glad you finally stopped." Diana Mercer kept her name. Marcus Webb kept his. Their lives together were full in the way that has nothing to do with how much you own. Jade enrolled at Texas A&M the following fall. Marine biology. Full scholarship. She texted Marcus a photo of the campus on her first day, and he stood in the kitchen of the apartment and read it 3 times before he put his phone down. Diana's foundation launched a new initiative the following spring, funded emergency support for working caregivers pursuing higher education. The first class of recipients were people exactly like Marcus had been. People working 2 jobs and raising someone who depended on them and still showing up to class because they refused to stop building toward something. As for Todd, he eventually found work again. Nothing like what he'd had. Something smaller, more human scale. He was quieter than he used to be. More patient in lines. More careful about the assumptions he made about people based on what they were wearing or how their day appeared to be going. Some education you get in a classroom. Some you get in a grocery store on a Saturday afternoon when you least expect it. The woman at the front of the line cannot pay for her rice. And in that moment you find out exactly who you are. Do not waste that moment. You never know who is watching. And you never know what being decent to a stranger might be worth.